today. So
perfect, thank you. So we're just going to wait for a few moments for people to join us live. But
now, did I set aside? I forget, an hour and a half, is it, or
just an hour would be
No.
perfect, actually. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll talk for about 45 minutes, and then we've had some wonderful questions over the last few days. So hopefully people will have some questions for you, and we can spend some time answering those when they come up in the comments.
Yeah, it might be really good to give at least 20 to 25 minutes for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
it can be rich. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So welcome to day 5 of the Heart of Dad Summit. It's wonderful to be here. We've had an amazing week. On Monday, we started off the summit with Dr. Dickin Bettinger and talked about the power of presence, and heard a lot from him about that. And on Tuesday, we were joined by Dr. Mark Howard, and Mark spoke beautifully about love and understanding and how that can influence our everyday as parents, as fathers. On Wednesday, we were joined by David Key, and David spoke very powerfully about legacy and how we can be creating legacy from today. And yesterday, we explored resilience with David Foster and had an amazing conversation about that. And I'm so excited and pleased to finish this week with Dr. Bill Pettit. I didn't get a chance to say to you, Bill, actually, before we went live, but when I first started exploring these principles, I listened to the whole series of podcasts that you did on mental health diagnoses, and that was really, really powerful for me. And I remember my breath being taken away by some of the stories you shared of people coming into their mental health. It was so touching, and maybe we might hear some of those stories from you today as well, because I think it's one of the things that you share so beautifully. So if you're here on the live, just say hi Tim, hi Nikki. Great to have you here. Tell us who's here and where you are, so we can get a sense of who our audience is. And we're going to have an amazing conversation. Hey Richard, really good to have you here as well. And I'm not going to introduce Bill in detail. His bio is in the email from today, so everybody who's joining will have a good sense of his enormous expertise and very long career, and an extraordinary one, bringing the 3 principles into mainstream psychiatric medicine, which I think is an extraordinary gift that he's given the world. Hey Giles, great to have you here too. So Bill, thank you for joining us. It's so good to see you here.
You're welcome. It's nice I enjoyed our time together a few minutes before the show, just to get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you. So Bill, what I've been asking every father, your grandfather too, coming onto the discussion is, what does fatherhood mean to you? I'd love to hear.
Well, I can tell you what it's come to mean. It's come to mean unconditional love. That's what it's come to mean. There's absolutely nothing that my 4 children could do or say that would affect the love that I have for them. Absolutely nothing, because it's not theirs to decide, it's mine. So that's certainly been a journey. Early on, before I met the principles, I'm sure it was fatherhood was, we all get a starter kit, and so we get a starter kit from our parents or from whoever raised us. And my father was a good man, as was my mother. But they weren't blessed to be exposed to um, the understanding that I've come to be exposed to about 37 years ago. And so my father was a pretty strict disciplinarian, and I think I grew up thinking that one of your jobs as a father was to met out discipline. You know, I heard "Wait till your father comes home" too many times when I was young. Um, but but I also, after I met Sid, it was a little bit discretion, but I think it'll come back, Matt, and stop me at any time. As I said, I'm here to assist in any way I can. After I met Sid on April Fool's Day, which many people have heard my story on April Fool's Day of 1983, um, I, uh, I resigned from my job with the company that I was with. I had left psychiatry because I hadn't seen it help me that much, and I hadn't seen it help other people that much. I've been going in and out of depression for 21 years, even though it never stopped me from education or my journey. I certainly was in extreme mental pain much of the time, or intermittently. I said to somebody yesterday, depression to me was a real thing. I didn't know that I was creating it. It was a construct of what I was creating innocently with my thinking. And so uh, when I after I started to access this mental well-being inside of me, that that was incredible. As Sid often says, when you have an insight, you look out at the world and everything in it, and it looks like the world has changed because your eyeballs have changed. Your level of understanding and your feeling level comes out your eyeballs. And so within a month or so, we were on our way to Florida, where I was gonna take a year's fellowship. I had gave my 2 weeks notice, and on my way, this was a couple of months later, but I was on my wife and 2 children at the time were on our way to Florida to take a from California to take a fellowship with 3 psychologists that Sid Banks was mentoring. And Sid had said, "Why don't you go and study with them, and I'll be teaching them and teaching you." And we stopped off in the middle of the United States in Illinois to where my folks were, and my wife's folks were about 45 miles away. My father and I had been kinda like that for many years. I mean, not terrible. I think he hit me once, as when I was mean to my brother, and um, but I'd spanked a lot as a kid. But we could sit down to watch a ball game on television and have at least a 30 to 40% chance that one of us would stalk out of the room before the game was over because of something that we saw differently, and we're invested in being right. And I remember walking. I didn't know this was going to happen, but I remember walking through the door on our way from California to Florida. And I remember arriving at my folks' home. All the kids were grown. I was the second oldest of 6. And I saw my father, and he looked different. I saw him through eyes of love, unconditional love for the first time in my entire life. I didn't say it. I didn't have to say it. I was 41 years old. His parenting score went from 17.5% to 98.7, and not sure what to 1.3, because I saw that he and my mom had loved us with their whole heart and soul as best as they knew how to do. Uh, and he must have felt it at some level, because at 41 years old, for those first 3 days that we were there visiting, he told me many more stories of his life than I had heard in 41 years. And I'm sure it was because he felt the unconditional love from me. So I know you say, "Well, how's that as a father?" But that same process, obviously, my children, I had 2 at the time, and they started looking different, and my role as a father looked different. My 8-year-old struck my 6-year-old brother one day, and from my starter kit, I started to spank her, and I think I hit her bottom one time, and I saw the craziness of it. I saw that what I was teaching her was that the biggest person gets to do the hitting, and I became a teacher and a model. I think I love the saying that the child says to the parent, uh, "I can't hear what you're saying because the way you are speaks so loudly." So I think being a parent, uh, to a great degree is being a model.
Mm.
It That's why Sid used to say, "The most selfless thing you can do is to be totally selfish about getting peace of mind, because you can't give what you don't have." So, I don't know if that's my
Yeah, that's absolutely perfect. Thank you so much for all you've just shared there. I think it's deeply resonant, and we've got a lovely comment from Richard there. That was beautiful. So I just want to circle back, Bill, for a moment, because you talked about your experiences of depression, and
Mm,
the focus for today's discussion with you is really about mental health uh, and dads. And I've had my own experiences of depression in my life, and anxiety too. And when you spoke to it, I can't remember the exact words you said, but for people who aren't familiar with this understanding that you're alluding to, um, would you be able to describe kind of your experience of depression, and then what shifted, and why you feel it shifted?
sure. I think what I'd like to do, though, is to and I know there's certainly a broad variation of of people's the way they see things, so it's important for people know that I'm not here to, convince anybody of anything. I'm here to share what I've seen. Sid used to always say it, and I mean it too, then I tell people, "Please don't believe anything I say." I will not purposely tell you anything that isn't true for me, but if you just accept what I say as true, uh, just because I've said it, then you've become a follower, and you've given up your, um, right to access your own internal wisdom that can will that is the to me, is the divine thought system that's at the core of every human being. I tell people, I know there's a little tangential, Matt, and I want you to make sure you know where you wanted me to start, 'cause I just finished this. I tell people that we have a lemon tree. I'm here in Arizona. We have a lemon tree in our backyard, and I say, there's really 2 main differences between me and the lemon tree. One is I get to move around a lot more than it does. It's kinda stationary, it's locked in with its roots. But we have more alike than we have different, because we're both, um, the divine thought system in a form, has taken a form. Everything to me, again, just the way I see it, and people like David Bohm and Einstein, if they were here, would say the same thing. So I'd have some pretty good, backup here. But even then, you wanna reach inside and say, "Does this resonate? Does my truth meter going towards truth, or is it going towards bullshit?" You know? Um, and so the other difference between me and the lemon tree is that we're both what's similar is that we're both divine mind in form, or in manifesting in form. Every day we're creating, but I have the choice to use the power of divine mind in a personal way so that I can create misery for myself. I can listen to my stored information in my brain. Uh, that everybody has different stored information. There's no two human beings that has the exact same material in their computer, their laptop that they carry around in their brain. And so that's the primary difference, because I can innocently create misery. I cannot realize that I have this divine thought system available to me 24/7, which nobody told me about. 26 and a half years of schooling, 5 years of residency. No one, 41 years of life. No one told me. Are you familiar with the My Guide Inside series? There's 4 different children's sets, and I'm dedicated myself eventually to know about all of them, but I most know the My Guide Inside series by Krista Campsell and Kathy Emerson Marshall. Krista Campsell and her husband Bob were New Sid from 1975 on, and it's on www. My Guide Inside, and they've made a series of teachers manuals and student manuals for first through fourth graders, fifth through ninth graders, and ninth through 12. This is the first through fourth graders. And Matt, I tell people the first 4 lessons in this first grade book, I wish somebody would have told me the first 4 days of my schooling of 26 and a half years. I'm just going to, at the beginning of each of these 4 lessons, see that little blue, blue thing? Is it okay if I just read this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Go for it.
Because this is, I wish that somebody would have told me this. I wouldn't have, I'll get back to depression. I really will. But this is the first lesson, and there's activities and everything. I'm not going to go. I'm just going to read this little blue thing that has about 3 sentences of the first 4 lessons. It says, "Let's learn something new. You have a guide inside. It is wisdom and common sense. Everyone has this guide inside. Just look for the feeling. You can trust your guide. It points you in the right way." I'm telling you, if somebody would have told me the first day of grade school, the trajectory, that one lesson, if they didn't even go to lesson 2, that would have changed the trajectory of my life tremendously. And this is the way the world is going to change. I tell people as we go through these 4, I said, if every adult in the world got these first 4 lessons in their heart, within a week, the world would change dramatically. We have a guide inside. It's wisdom and common sense. Now, I've come to see that as divine mind, that we're all a manifestation of the divine intelligence, of, if you will, universal mind. Lesson number 2, you've discovered your guide inside. In chapter 2, be ready to learn that your feelings are created by your thoughts. Wow. I thought it was that kid that bullied me on the internet. I thought it was that person that didn't appreciate what I did. I always thought that it was my spouse when she got in a low mood and she said something that I interpreted as mean. I walked around life, Matthew, like Pinocchio, and I'd handed out strings to anybody that wanted one. And whenever they wanted to, they could pull the string. And I woke up every morning knowing that I did not have internal control over how my day went. It depended to a huge degree on what circumstances occurred and how people treated me. Let's learn something new. My thought creates my feeling. All that's all is a big word. Every is a big word. All my feelings come from thought. I can let unwanted thoughts pass by and my well-being is present again. I'm back in touch with that divine thought system. I won't go through all the activities and the dandy words. There's 12 to 20 words at the end of these are for this is the first two lessons for first graders. And if I would have known that my feelings came from my thinking, I wouldn't have gone through in and out of depression for 21 years, I guarantee you. Number 3, third lesson, happiness is inside of me. I thought it was winning the affections of a pretty girl, or winning a tennis match, or getting a high score in my medical exam. When the clouds cover the sun, I know the sun is still in the sky. As the clouds pass by, I know I will see the sun again. My cloudy thoughts also pass by. When that happens, I feel happy. It's simple to see. Happiness is inside of me. Wow. And I spent an awful lot of my life looking for happiness in things external and then wondering why I felt isolated and frustrated and alone. Now, the way I tee up, and this is the last one I'll do of the 8 lessons, chapter 4, it's what I tell people, Matt, and it usually gets their curiosity. You haven't obviously heard me do this, I can tell, right?
I haven't. I've
Okay.
never heard you do this thing.
So I say, here's chapter 4 for first graders. And I've been a student and a sharer, and I say that. I don't say coach, I don't say teacher. I will say mentor. But I'm basically a student and a sharer of these 3 universal principles for 37 years. And I've had incremental insights that every 6 months of my life, I would say, my life has gotten more gentle and more loving. I mean, it's not that it's smooth, but there might be dips, but the direction, the arc of the moral universe, as they say, is long, and my personal arc has been long too, but it's been in a direction. So I tell people this 4th lesson for first graders, on my good days, I get a B minus. Do they in England they do numbers though, don't they?
They do numbers, but yeah, I mean, I'm
You're familiar with ABC.
people understand. Yeah, people understand the B
People
minus
understand. Okay.
energy.
So F, A, B, C, D, E, F, or A, B, C, D, F. Usually there's no E, right, for some reason. So I tell people on my good days, I get a B minus on this lesson. And on my bad days, I get a D plus after 37 years. This is the 4th lesson for first graders. Okay. And people go, whoa, what lesson is that? Right.
Yeah, right.
It used to be my good days. There was a time when my good days was a C and my bad days was an F, right? So in chapter 3, you learned happiness is inside of you. In chapter 4, you can choose, you can learn that you can choose to be fast and furious or calm and curious. Let's learn something new. I can see that I am thinking fast and furious. I can choose to let it go, and I will be calm and curious. I tell people this divine thought system manifests kind of like a soft instrument that you like, whether it be a flute or a harp or whatever 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 that would mean to you, a violin playing softly. And it brings wisdom and certainty and clarity. In the United States here, we have these big marching bands, which I'm sure you've seen in the football games. And I tell people, I went to a lot of University of Iowa ball games as a child. I say, that harp, that wisdom, that harp, that violin, that flute never stops playing. But it's hard to hear it if I've got the Iowa marching band playing in my head. And I don't know that all I have to do is to get present. I know you said that, was it Dickon that talked about that?
Yeah, I was talking about presence.
And he does so beautifully, yeah. All I have to do, I don't have to do anything to try to slow my thinking down, because I'm trying to use my fast thinking to slow my thinking down. You can't do it.
Right.
You can't do it. It's like having a computer that has a virus. Well, and I mean, I'm not a good computer person to talk metaphors, but you've got to have malware. You've got to have something that does something. The on itself, the computer can, once it's got a virus, it's just going to keep going around.
Right.
But all the fact that all you have to do, people want it to be more complicated so often. I did. I said, what do you mean? All I have to do is just get present in my life and do the best I can, even if it's like a 3 out of 10, just be the best 3 I can be. Yeah, that's all you have to do. If you're willing to just be the best 3 you can be, 2 things will happen. You will be present, as Dickon, I'm sure, said so eloquently, and your mind will quiet on its own. It has no choice any more than a pedal. If you've got a bike upside down, if you stop doing the wheel, it will start to slow down. In fact, our mind will slow down much quicker than that wheel will. And before you know it, if you're willing to be the best 3 out of 10 without judgment on yourself, that you shouldn't ever have to be a 3 again because you know these principles and all that bullshit that people tell themselves, me too. If you're willing to just be the best 3 you can, before you know it, you're at a 4. And then you say, I'm going to be the best 4. And before you know it, you're at a 5. Now, back to depression, I used to get hit by something that I got caught up in thinking about, and suddenly went from say an 8 in my life to a 4, and I'd get frightened and scared and angry at myself. And then I was at a 3 and I got more scared. Then I was at a 2 and I got more scared. And since all I thought I had was my intellect, I didn't know that I had that place of wisdom, the divine thought system. The next thing I knew, I was in the basement, and I didn't know how I'd gotten there. I couldn't see that my hand was pushing the down button on the elevator and was still stuck there. So I went in and out of depression. And even when I wasn't depressed, because I didn't understand that I was the agent of that occurring, it felt like even when I wasn't in a depression, it was a black cloud about 2 feet behind me that, if it had a voice, could say, don't get cocky, because I can have your ass anytime I want it. Anytime I want it. So that's my story. Now, if you want, I can take about 5 minutes as a physician and as a psychiatrist who's a lifelong student of physiology and how things work, to talk about what depression really is, and how it's created, if you like.
That would be fantastic. I mean, I just want to pause for a second just to
Sure.
acknowledge firstly what you've just shared. I think the analogies are absolutely perfect, and we've had a whole string of comments here, just people saying, that was fantastic. There's a question from Colin, which I think you've partly answered or fully answered, but I'm going to come back to it when we come back to the question part, Colin, if that's okay, and unless you want to comment that you've got what you needed from Bill in just that segment. But I think it's a great question, so we'll come back to it. And Richard saying he was at a C and a D level. Nikki saying, I love that. Be the best 3 you can be. Yeah, I thought that might resonate for you, Nikki. Bill, I'd love you to talk to us from this other perspective that you're going to share. That would be fantastic.
Yeah. There's a quote that some of you might have heard. I think it's worth, if I can pull it up really quick, which I think I can. And it's a quote from Dr. Tom Insel, who was the director of the National Institute of Mental Health from 2005 to 2017. Now, he sees the answer differently. He sees the answer in genetics and all this stuff, right? There's the lead article in the American Journal of Psychiatry 2 months ago was on, the whole issue is almost on depression. And the author is an internationally known author, and he says, after all these decades, we don't really understand how it gets caused. We think it's something to do with genetics and environment and how they come together. Absolutely no mention of what people are doing with this incredible gifts through which we create our experience moment to moment. But here's what he said. He said in 2012, we are so embedded in this structure, we have spent so much time diagnosing mental disorders that we actually believe they are real. But there's no reality. They're just constructs. Stay with me, folks. Thank your brain for sharing its comments. There's no reality to schizophrenia or depression. We may have to stop using terms like depression and schizophrenia because they are getting in our way and confusing things. Wow. Director of the National Institute of Mental Health. He goes on to say, whatever we've been doing for 5 decades, it ain't working. And I think he uses the word ain't to get our attention. And when I look at the numbers of suicides, the numbers of disabilities, the mortality data, it's abysmal. And it's not getting any better. All of the ways in which we've approached these illnesses, and with a lot of people working very hard, the outcomes we've got to this point are pretty bleak. So people say, how can you say there's no such thing as depression? Well, it's a construct. If you have, to me, there's at least 7. I mean, you can use the power of thought in an infinite number of ways. But about 25 years ago, Matt, I started as a clinician. I was still practicing psychiatry, clinical psychiatry, which I retired from a little over a year ago. And I thought, how is it that people take themselves away? How did I take myself away from this constant spiritual guide I can see at times that I did access it. I just thought I was lucky. I didn't know that I'd quieted down just a little bit because everything has a crack in it. That's how the light gets out. There's a song by Leonard Cohen where he says everything has a crack in it. That's how the light gets in. Yeah. I woke up the next morning and I said, it's how the light gets out. There's a light coming through us. It's inside of us. And so in the past, what do we do? Through guilt, beating ourselves up for mistakes, not seeing our psychological innocence, that we were lost. Yeah, lostness is innocence. We get lost. Guilt, resentment, holding on to hurts. Well, I really want peace of mind, but I'm never going to forgive that son of a bitch for what he did to me. Lots of luck for the peace of mind. And it's not a should. It's just how the system works. It's like gravity. If you don't put your cup down on the table and you just let go of it, you got a mess. It's just the way the system works. What's the third way from the past? Grief, unresolved grief. Ever since X, Y, or Z died, I feel a part of me is missing. Okay. Present, either driven by fear or ego. And I love the saying, you can never have enough of what you don't need anyway. Or we're guided by divine wisdom that's available every minute of our life. To what degree am I, and I have people rate themselves 0 to 5. To what degree am I upset when things are not the way that I want them to be? And in the future, facing uncertainty with either worry, what ifs, getting caught up in the what ifs. And I tell people, Matt, that, rabbits have this reputation of being able to multiply very quickly. And I tell people, I'll put 2 what ifs against any 2 rabbits in the world.
Love it.
If I leave 2 rabbits alone and come back in 10 minutes, then maybe something started, but there's going to be 2 rabbits walking around. If I put 2 what ifs in my head, every one of them has a new baby every 4 seconds. And I've got hundreds of those little suckers running around in my head. And overanalysis. I've got to figure this out. I've got to figure this out. That's where I lived for 41 years. Why? I have incredible compassion for myself for those 41 years because that's all I thought I had. I have a son who has a construction company, and because he's an honest man and a hard worker, is a successful construction company. And it'd be like if he has an incredible, $35,000 worth of tools. If he went to every job and all he had was a hammer, everything starts looking like a nail. That's how you got. And that's all I had. That's all I had. So overanalysis and worry dissipates once people really have a sense that they are divine wisdom and it's being guiding them every day of their life. If you don't know that, you start misusing these beautiful gifts. And we have at least 4 alarm systems that let us know when we're going off track. Is this an okay place to keep going, or did you?
Yeah, this is really valuable. I'm all ears, and I imagine everybody else is too.
Well, the first, and I'll just go over the 4: mood, tension level, clarity of thinking, and physical. Divine mind, to me, is totally beneficent. Even the pandemic, it's saying, listen, you people need a deep rest. You need to reset. You need to get quiet. You need to look again at what's important in life. It's not a punishment. I know people see it. No. It's just when I don't, if I would let my coffee off down here, it's not punishing me if I make a mess all over the floor. It's telling me I don't understand the system. Okay. To the degree that I start getting caught up in the content of my thinking and get lost, and every human being is going to have these alarms go off. What's genetic and socially from nurture and nature is different is which one of these is louder. So I had a lady yesterday that I talked to from down under, and her biggest alarm is anxiety. She gets depressed a little bit because she's so anxious, but primarily her alarm system, and I used to think of them as alarms, and then I thought of them as information. And then last year in November, I was getting ready to speak. I was in the shower in Albert, Spain, getting ready to speak at the Viva event. And it came to me, these are more than alarms and information, they're love letters. That changes everything, Matt. That's a game changer. That's a game changer. A love letter. A love letter. Universal mind is to me totally beneficent. No judgment, no punishment, totally beneficent. So what happens? every human being that gets caught up in the content of their personal thinking, if they're overdoing it in a way that either too fast or in a way that's hurtful, their mood will go down. And that's a love letter. It's a gift. It's a gift when I put my hand on the stove and it hurts like hell, because I get my hand off the stove very fast and I have minimal tissue damage to my hand. There are people that have syringomyelia that put their hand on a stove if they didn't know that it was on and it's not burning to anybody see. They will not know it until they smell the burning flesh because they don't have pain receptors. My mood goes down. If I go down, if I keep going far enough, I will get irritable. Then I'll get really angry along with the depression, and then I'll feel isolated and alone. And at the end of that journey, some people get to the point where suicide is the only option, and the only question is, do I kill anybody else before I kill myself? I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer. I'm just trying to explain how the system works. Anxiety, tension level. Our level of tension will get build. If it builds enough, we'll have panic attacks. It's a friend. The panic attack is a friend. It's a release of norepinephrine from the locus coeruleus. It's like hitting the rumble strip on the side of the road that saves you from flipping over into the ditch. If you keep going, you're going to have dissociative episodes where you lose periods of time. If you keep going, eventually the end point would be to have 5 different personalities. Because if they were all in the same place, you'd either have to kill yourself or go psychotic. 3, thought. Your clarity of thought goes, and now suddenly you feel muddled in your thinking. You're having trouble concentrating. You suddenly have ADHD-like symptoms because you can't pay attention. You're forgetting. You're losing your keys. You're forgetting where your wallet is. You're missing appointments. Why? Those are love letters. As soon as I start misplacing something, I go, well, okay, fast and furious, calm and curious. Number 4, physical. And it's bi-directional. If your mood starts going down, 70% of people who get depressed have back or neck pain. If you injure yourself and you don't understand that you have the healing will occur if you just be the best you can, and say 70% of people that have back or neck pain get depressed. It's bi-directional. The body, I know a dermatologist that said he treats a lot of psoriasis, and again, no judgment. He says, I see now that people are weeping through their skin. They're weeping through their skin. The state of chronic inflammation that occurs with the chronic activation of the stress response is responsible for between 80 and 110 diseases. Major factor. And I won't, if people are interested in this, I'll promote my course a little bit that I'm sure you have the link. It's on my email. It's called the Mind, Brain, Body, Behavior Connection. Why Universal Principles Changes Everything. And people have found it many times to be really help them remarkably. So in behaviors and in physical. So I'm going to stop because of the time and see if that's helpful at all.
Well, it's wonderful, Bill. I mean, there's so much really practical and beautifully heartfelt sharing there. I'm just going to share some of the comments. This one from Mary. Today is the anniversary of the early death of my brother, who suffered all his life since he got the label of schizophrenia at the age of 19. And his mother had died tragically when he was entering his teenage years. So feeling all of these freedom insights, they need to be let out to become the norm. Thank you. That's really beautiful. And then Giles, a love letter. That's beautiful. That's when we really begin to embrace our suffering and come back to wisdom so much quicker. Really great. So I just want to go back to Colin's question. And this was really in relation to your Pinocchio analogy, Bill. He said, how do you cut the strings and take control back, have ownership over your life? So you did speak somewhat to that, I think, earlier, but what occurs to you right now hearing that?
Well, the strings are imaginary. They're illusion. They're an illusion. They're a lack of understanding. And I'm one of those old guys, having been mentored by Sid for 26 years. I'm sure I have this reputation. I tell people, listen, even before you spend money with me, I would encourage you, if you haven't done it, to read all 6 of Sid's little books twice through, because you'll have different eyes and ears the second time you read them. I've read most of them at least 15 times. Then I would watch the Long Beach videos along with them, and the Hawaii visuals and the Washington lectures. They're all on www.sidbanks.com, all available for free. And I'd watch them at least twice through. And then if you had questions, contact Mark, contact Dickon, contact somebody that you trust, myself. So somebody that seems to resonate with you. Because to me, the answer is at a deeper level of understanding. When you have an insight, you suddenly see that it is inside of me, that I'm in charge. There's a wonderful story that I won't go into detail, but there's a wonderful story that I was told of by a PhD from a major university in the East, who interviewed a man in 1988 who was 120 years old. Have you heard me tell that story?
I haven't. No, I've not heard this story. No.
There's an African American man who, at the age of 80, his farm burned down in Georgia. Probably not accidentally. I think odds were, in 1948, probably unlikely that it was accidental. He had no insurance, but because he was African American, instead of going to a nursing home, he was sent to the Georgia State Mental Hospital, where he'd been for 40 years. He was 120 years old. And this PhD psychologist was asked to come and interview him. And I'm going to make it very short. This man at age 19 was walking down the street in Georgia, and a white woman came, and he was to bow his head to the ground by city ordinance until she passed, and then he could raise his head up again. And instead, he looked her in the eye and he said a very warm, "Good morning, ma'am." He was arrested, put in jail, jury trial, sentenced to 20 years in prison for reckless eyeballing. He served 12 of that. And the PhD professor said, "Are you telling me," and he told me this was in "Are you telling me that you weren't angry, bitter, pissed off, and fantasizing what you'd like to do to that person?" And he said the old man looked at him with a compassion that he'd only experienced from his mother. And finally, the old man spoke, and he said, "Boy," I guess if you're 120, you get to call people whatever the hell you want to, right? He said, "Boy, no, I didn't do that. I didn't do that for 2 reasons, at least. One was it wouldn't have gotten me out of jail, being angry. And number 2, more importantly, it would have ruined my day." Pardon me? It would have ruined my day. You see, I've got this place of love. This guy never heard of Sid Banks. This was 30 years ago. This is not new. Sid said that. This has been there. This understanding's been there. People have seen it. He said, "You see, I've got a place of love and joy in my heart." Viktor Frankl knew this, that nobody can take away. I have to give it away. And I'm pretty stingy with it. So
beautiful story.
The answer is insight. You can't get there intellectually, but you can listen to somebody like Sid or some other spiritual person that you're attracted to that's pointing to where the answer is, because you've already got it. It's not like calculus. It's not like something you're putting in. It's something you're drawing out. That's the true definition of education, is to draw out, educere, right?
Yeah.
What's already there. It can't draw it out unless it's already there.
Beautifully said. We have a question from Tim now, Bill. What do you say to a world that pushes you to be fast and furious and gets frustrated, concerned even, when you calm down and get curious?
Well, keep that up if you can, because
Yeah, of course.
the word there is pushes you. No one people can push me physically. Now, I would say no one has the ability to push me any other way than physically. People can people are at their level of understanding. So they're going to have their expectations and their whatever. And even if it's a workplace, it's only insecurity that keeps people to stay in a place that they can't, at their present level of functioning, that they can't keep their mental well-being. Because I'll tell you, your mental well-being is important. One of the things that happens, there's so many things, again, that happens in the body when people are in a chronic state of stress. And the day you stop blaming anybody or anything external to you and take responsibility for it and keep looking in a direction, because our immune system, if the stress response was made to help us escape with a saber-toothed tiger and had nothing but a wooden club. So what happens? Your immune system gets knocked out. So if you do it over time, if you activate it over worry or upset or drivenness, you're liable to viruses. This is not the time to have your immune system compromised with this pandemic going on, because you'll be a setup for a cytokine storm that kills you. Bacteria, cancers, your immune system. Why did that happen in the stress response? Because you need everything to stun the saber-toothed tiger with your club. If it eats you, you're not going to have to worry about bacteria, viruses, or cancer. Your sex response goes. Your sex desire goes. Again, you're not going to have to worry about having an erection or as a woman sexually aroused if this saber-toothed tiger eats you. Number 3, growth. All of this, none of that, your immune system, your growth, your maintenance, all of that is. So what happens? People get hyper. You want to be hyperclottable. So if that saber-toothed tiger gets a piece of your shoulder and you stun it and get away, you might be able to put some furs on it and stop the bleeding. But if you're worrying about your mom's breast cancer, your dad's alcoholism, or your grandson's cocaine habit, or a layoff at the factory, then and you become hyperclottable, deep vein thrombosis, stroke, heart attack. Nixon had deep vein thrombosis within 48 hours after leaving in disgrace in office. Hubert Humphrey, within 48 hours after losing as a president because he was so invested in winning, got deep vein thrombosis. People are dying all the time of strokes and heart attacks in the 40s and 50s. So what I'm saying is, if your peace of mind becomes the most important thing in your life, you will be guided. You will be guided to know what to do, and you won't have anybody or anything experience of them pushing you around, except physically. That's the only thing. People can do that to me physically.
That's beautiful, Bill. It really comes back to that first lesson you shared from the book about we all have wisdom and common sense inside.
Absolutely. You can take that down. But I just wanted that word pushes. I know that's the experience. I lived that experience for 41 years, and I'm not saying that I never lived it in the last 37, but it's become rarer and rarer. And I think that's where freedom lies. You know, Viktor Frankl, who spent 3.5 years in the death camp, and when he got out, by all post-traumatic literature, should have died within the first 3 or 4 years, lived to be 95 and wrote 16 books. Why? Because he said, I saw that between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And it's in that space that our freedom lies. And as people come to understand the principles incrementally, to me, that space gets bigger and bigger.
Beautiful, thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions? Otherwise, I can give Bill. People have been emailing me with questions over the last few weeks, and we could take one of those. There's one actually that's really poignant from Dwayne, which I want to share with you. And he wrote to me saying that how could he fix 11 years of neglect in relation to his children? That he hadn't been present, that he'd really struggled, and he felt heartbroken that his relationships had been so negative with his children.
Yeah, again, it sounds corny, but to the degree that he judges himself and not sees his own innocence, that he did the best that he knew, and allows him to get present now and keep looking towards understanding these principles. To me, they're not the only way home, but to me, they've been the most reliable to assist people and the most practical and so and just to even to be apologize to your children I wish I would have known better. I know it now. I wish I could rewind the film. If I dropped the of course I know in England it would be different, it would be soccer, but in our American football, if I dropped the touchdown pass that hit me right in the hands that would have won the state championship, and at the end of the game, I can show that film 300 times and I'm not going to catch it the 300th time. I didn't catch it. That's over. The only thing that exists, and in fact, infinity is an infinite number of nows. And I'm sure that's what that Dickon, my good friend Dickon, talked about. That's all there is now.
Yeah.
The past doesn't exist. 5 minutes ago doesn't exist. 5 minutes from now, we got now. And the more we start living there and doing the next right thing as best as we can, your life is going to go in direction. The other thing I'd like to say, Matt, is direction is the key, not speed. In the United States, if I want to get to Alaska from Arizona, it's better to be going 6 miles an hour north than 85 miles an hour south. Direction is the key.
I love that. What a perfect way to close this out as well. And just a comment from Colin, whose question we were answering. Thank you, very helpful, and got some direction and studying to do. Prone to overthinking what ifs, as labelled as dyslexic. Thank you. I'm really glad we touched on something there for Colin. And actually, just a final response to what you were just sharing, Bill. Mark had something great to say on Tuesday that, of course, our children have the same wisdom as us.
Absolutely.
They're the same spiritual energy as us. And for Dwayne, who is, he's really feeling very sad and distraught about his relationship with his children, just to recognize everything that Bill said, and that your children have that same wisdom too.
And the more he feels distraught, the more he's thinking about himself.
Right.
For me, I saw that guilt is one of the most egotistical things there is, because I'm thinking about me, how horrible I am. And it makes me less available to the people that I love.
Fantastic. There's been so much value in what you shared over the last hour. I'm very, very grateful to you, Bill. Beautiful stories, really touching, and also some fascinating insights into the kind of neurological and physiological aspects of the direction we've been exploring this week as well. So thank you with all my heart for coming on and sharing of yourself in the way that you have.
You're welcome. So nice to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. So just a reminder that we're at the very end of week 1 of the Heart of Dad Summit. We start again on Monday at the same time, 5 p.m. UK time, GMT, 9 a.m. PST. We've got a great lineup for next week. We're starting off with Amir Kakuti talking about play. We're going to be meeting with Angus Ross, who's going to be telling us about rewilding fatherhood. We've got Dr. Jack Pransky on Wednesday, and we're going to be going deeper into the wisdom that Bill's been sharing with us. On Thursday, we're going to be with Sam Wilde talking about anger and fatherhood. and we're going to finish off the summit with Jamie Smart talking about creativity in fatherhood as well. So.
Wow. Well, I know everybody but Sam, and please give Angus, Ross, Jack, and Jamie, if you can, tell them I wish them well and say hello.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you to everybody who came on to the live this evening and shared of yourselves and your comments. Really enjoyed the questions and everybody's participation, and wishing you all a wonderful weekend, and see you again next week.
Great.